Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Joining us on the program today is a wonderful guest that we've had on here before, and she talked about having the capability of being a pet psychic and actually helping heal pets and come to a better understanding of how they operate and what they have on their minds as well. Today we're going to go a little bit deeper, though. We're going to be talking about healing the inner child and what that process involves and what the outcome is for those of us out there who just kind of feel like we're off the beaten path a little bit and can't seem to figure out what it is that we need to do to fly on the straight and narrow to get to where we want to be. And I'd like to welcome to our program, Spiritual Intuitive, Sonia Grace, to the Beyond 50 radio program. And how are you doing today, Sonia?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing well, Dan. Thank you.
Very good. Now, this healing the inner child, we've had a lot of programs here where we try to talk about people who are trying to redesign their lives generally by the time they get to that midlife process, just thinking there's just something they've left behind or something missing. Let's talk about how important this can be for people to actually heal and to move forward.
Okay. Just to make the jump for some people, I work with people as much as I work with pets, and of course the process is different, but when I'm communicating with the pet, I'm actually literally hearing what's being said to me sort of in a telepathic way. When I communicate with people, I'm talking to them and I'm helping them process whatever their issue is. So if someone calls me and says, I just keep manifesting the same type of guy. It doesn't matter what he looks like. He's blonde, he's got dark hair, he's got brown hair, he's tall, he's short, he's thin, he's fat. It doesn't matter. It's the same guy. It's the same pattern. And that's the kind of stuff that I go into and help people and say, okay, you're 50-some years old now and you've had this same ongoing pattern. Let's go internal and really take a look at what's happening with the inner child. And I firmly believe the inner child is the key to all of it. It is the key for us to heal and to have the peace that we're all looking for inside.
Mm-hmm. Now, what exactly is the inner child?
The inner child is an aspect of ourselves. I literally see it as the part of us that was growing up from the time we were, born, or even before birth in the womb, but the time that we came into this world. It's that part of us that's playful. It's that part of us that, feels things on a very deep level. It's that part of us that, loves to go to a ball game and eat a hot dog and eat popcorn. I mean, it's that very part of us that is, to me, the seed of our passion. When we were little kids, most of us got to experience sort of passion unabound. We ran and played in fields and rode our bikes, and, the sky was the limit. And that's the energy that we all still carry with us. That inner child is always with us. It's that no one hands us a book when we leave home and we go off to college or we go get a job. No one hands us a book that says, okay, it's time to parent your inner child now. Let alone we don't get handed books on how to parent our own children. But we're not even told that we're supposed to parent this inner child. And so, you see people all the time, women who are, 40, 50-some years old, and they're still talking way up here, and they don't understand that this little girl, this little child in them is really in the forefront. She's driving the car. The adult's in the back seat going, isn't that great? My 5-year-old is such a little adult, and she can handle it. Because they don't know. They really, really don't know. You see men who are, just throwing fits of rage, and they're having these giant explosions, and their 3-year-old is way up front and upset because he doesn't feel loved, and he's not getting love, and he's not being nurtured and cared for in the way that he really needed when he received those woundings at 3 years old. So now it's in a 60-year-old man's body, and he's acting it out on a much bigger level because he's an adult. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that I try to help people get in touch with by doing inner child work and by helping them discover it, first of all, themselves, and secondly, that empowers them so that then they can, start doing more of a daily practice with the tools that I give them to, to communicate with that child.
I remember, Sonia, when I was in high school, that it became sort of that running, fun, playful joke when somebody would be down and out, and somebody you just inevitably always hear something like, well, tell me about your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize it in, I guess, as a possibility in, say, traditional talk therapy, that always seems to be what they do, is they go back in time to when you were a child, apparently to find when the alleged damage was done that causes you to be who you are today. So in truth, it almost sounds like we shut down at that time, I guess, to protect ourselves, but unwittingly kind of carry that with us, so we actually never mature. And I remember there was someone that I had been talking to probably within the last 6 months or so. It says that a lot of adults are truly just children that haven't truly matured yet. They've kind of just stayed there in time. Has that been your experience as you've worked with people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times, if a person experiences an emotional wounding, let's say at 5 years old, something really dramatic happens at home, they're literally arrested at 5. They stop growing emotionally at 5.
Wow.
And so their world, how they experience things in now as an adult is from that scope. It's from that place of that 5-year-old, and so their feelings get really hurt, and they cry a lot, and they feel a lot of things. They've got a lot of sensitivity to things, but they're not able to understand, process, and assimilate the information. And many people who come from dysfunctional families have the unnecessary pressure of being the little adult when they're children, which is why I made the comment earlier that the child ends up driving the car, and the adult is sitting in the back seat going, wow, look how capable my 5-year-old is.
Exactly. Now, as you've worked with people, typically, what is the process? Most people might think, okay, well, I sit down, I pay somebody, I tell them about what I'm feeling and thinking and my experiences, and then they try to unravel it and help me get it all figured out so I can move forward. But it sounds to me like you have I guess, an uncanny way of getting to the heart of the matter. So I suppose that if anybody was sitting with you, that even though they might try to be telling the truth, in fact, there might be elements they may be hiding it, but you actually cut through all that.
I do, and because I am a spiritual intuitive, and I'm called a medium, I'm called a clairvoyant. I have all of these gifts where I see the spirit realm, I hear it, I smell it, I feel it. It's like I'm able to sort of multitask while this kind of processing's going on. So I may be doing inner child work with someone, and their grandmother is standing there on the other side telling me what happened to this person when they were a child. So I've got kind of a really nice system working in that I'm able to help them, but not. I don't like to script people, so I'm much more comfortable with someone discovering information on their own. But I can certainly help them by receiving information from the other side. And I feel that people have the ability to get at this information and to release it. I do a whole processing with people where they get in touch with the inner child. We do some dialogue, and then I'm always interested in, okay, what are we going to do with this now? Because I don't believe in talk therapy. I think it's a giant waste of time. I think the reason we're here on the planet at this time is to get our karma cleared, to raise our consciousness, and to really raise up the consciousness of the human race. That's why we brought the human race in on the planet. So it's like, I'm kind of a real, let's get on with it. We're not going to sit here and just, spin our wheels because we've been in talk therapy for 15 years, And so I help people, we have the child, literally do work with that person where the child will take the emotion of abandonment and fear and see it as sort of an object in the body and remove it from the body and release it. And I do a whole process where it empowers people. They feel like they have some power over their own body and their emotions. And my whole platform that I work from is the four essential bodies: the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. And I feel that we have to really address those four bodies to understand more of where the child is, what's happening with that inner child, and on what level it's happening on.
You know, Sonia, it's really quite fascinating to think of how powerful emotion is. Let's try to describe for the listeners, because a lot of people know what emotion is, but why do we have it? And why does that seem to be, I say, that one key element that can either prevent us or help us get to where we want to go?
Well, I believe that the emotional body is our karma. It's the karmic work that we have to do while we're here on Earth. Meaning, and what does karma mean? To me, karma means it's the stuff that we have experienced in past lives, that when we die and we have, you know, maybe an unsettling death, or we die in a way that, you know, just wasn't exactly the way we had in mind. You know, we have emotional stuff that we've experienced in that lifetime. That's unresolved stuff comes with us. So as we experience this lifetime, I don't know if you've ever talked to a child who, you know, at 4 or 5 years old is talking about, you know, having been a pilot, or, you know, that they remember grandma being their mother, or, you know, they say funny things that you go, wow, where'd that come from? You know, they're still connected to the spirit realm, and they're still connected to their past life memories. And to me, it's bringing that stuff to consciousness and being able to clear it, to clear the karmic stuff that is still unsettling, that's still wreaking havoc in our lives, because, you know, karmically speaking, we've met that person again, and here we are doing round 10. Okay, let's work this stuff out one more time. And you know, to me, it's about liberating each and every one of us from having to do that, that we don't have to keep going round and round and round. And I think for the health and well-being of this planet, we all need to do this work.
Absolutely.
Because we are a race of beings that's evolving. And the emotional body is the tool. It's like if we feel our feelings and we practice forgiveness, we are automatically clearing our karma. But so many people don't want to feel their feelings. You know, they want to medicate. They want to forget about it. They want to feel good. Well, we all want to feel good, but we have to work through our karma in order to feel good.
Now, how powerful and influential is forgiveness?
Probably the most powerful tool we have. And it sounds so simplistic. You know, I mean, I go back to, you know, my childhood, and, you know, hearing my mom say, now you have to forgive her, you know. And I mean,
right.
it brings up so much stuff for me to think about forgiveness. But, you know, the one thing the spirit realm has said to me over and over again in every reading and every session I do with people is forgiveness is it's the main thing. It's the big tool. It's the one that releases them on the spiritual realm. I have so many people I do readings for come across and say, you know, your dad's asking you to forgive him. You know, well, then it turns out that person and their dad have a big old thing that they never did resolve. You know, which is why, you know, I'm getting that information and, you know, trying to help the healing process. And along the lines of the inner child and doing that type of work, I was working with a client who we had done a lot of processing work and inner child work, and she, at the same time, was dealing with her mom, who was very ill, and she was in a convalescent home, and she was pretty close to dying. And what came through in this processing and in this reading was her mother had been sexually abused when she was a child. This woman did not know this. She didn't have this information. And I shared what I got from, you know, the spirit realm with her. And she went to her mother and talked to her mom about what had happened and said, Mom, I'm just wondering if this ever happened to you as a child. And her mother started crying and said she had never told anyone that story her entire life. She had carried that around without ever sharing it with anyone. And shortly after that event and, getting to talk it out and, receiving all the love and support from her daughter that she did, she passed away. And this woman calls me all the time now and says, you gave my mom so much peace before she left. And that's the clearing the karma stuff that we're talking about. I helped by that information coming out, it cleared a huge thing for her so that she could then move on. And people get really private and they want to hold on to their stuff. Like, people will think ill of them, or they'll be embarrassed, or it's humiliating, or whatever. God, forget about that, man. We just have to get it out. We all go through stuff.
I know it's amazing when you talk about the power of emotion, and we hear about forgiveness, and that this is about working. I shouldn't say working through, but experiencing the emotion. It's funny how we seem to run from pain, but then we move toward joy. And pain is the greatest teacher to giving us more and more joy. Not that we want to live a painful existence, but emotional pain just simply does exist. Now, what is the process, as you would talk with our listeners here, that somebody can do right now to say, okay, I'm feeling a painful moment. What do I do?
Well, I believe that the first thing to do is to sit down and get really grounded, via the meditation I teach, or something that just opens up your whole body to connecting with the earth and grounding. I really like to just real quickly with my clients to do what's called run the river, and that's opening up the top of your head and the bottom of your feet and your hands, and you imagine this beautiful river running down through your body. It just washes away anything that doesn't need to be there and send it down into the ground. And it's very, it's really relaxing, and it's really powerful, because I do believe we have the ability in each of us to clear, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And so that's one way of just getting grounded quickly. To address the I'm feeling a lot of pain right now, the first thing I would recommend after getting grounded is to get in touch with that inner child, and to see whatever age that child comes to you, just to visualize yourself as a child coming to you, and you ask that child how they're doing, what's happening. Because 9 times out of 10, I tell you, my belief is that is the one who is feeling the pain. That is the person in us that's going through the trauma. We as adults have it together. We get it. We know. We're all pretty clued in. But I'll tell you what, that child, that's the one. When we all feel that fear, people start talking about the economy. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody's in fear. And if everybody sat down and just had a conversation with their inner child who's freaked out there's not going to be enough food, or there isn't going to be a place to lay down at night and sleep, or whatever, it's like that's the one, that's the part of us that we have to comfort and love and say, it's okay. I'm in charge now. I'm taking care of you. You're safe. And, miraculously, 9 times out of 10, the fear subsides. And it's like, oh, I really am okay. And a lot of times I tell people to, do this exercise every day and just nurture that inner child and give that child the love and the caring and all of the, heartfelt love that we didn't feel we got, when we were children, actually, at the time. And I'm not saying that our parents all didn't do a great job and raise us the way that they knew best to do, but sometimes we just didn't get what we really needed.
And that's the funny thing, is because you'll find that just on that perspective alone, that people later in life, as they feel like they've lived these years just kind of on autopilot, if you will, then you say, what do you want? And they can always tell you what they don't want. But generally, the common answer is, I really don't know. And as I'm listening to you, Sonia, it sounds like we knew what we wanted at a particular time, and perhaps due to a particular trauma, whatever it may be for the individual, that was cut off, and so they begin to live their life believing they could never get what they want, so why should they want anything, to the point where they don't know what they want. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because what you're talking about is that when we're children, we are really connected to our passion. And our passion is our lifeblood. It's our gasoline that makes our cars run. You know, it's like it's what makes us go. And so when you cut someone off from their passion, yes, that's exactly what happens. I mean, the classic example is, you know, the star soccer player, the kid who wanted to go on and be a professional soccer player. And the parents said, oh, no, that's totally unstable. You can't do that. You know, it's really no good. You have to become an accountant. And you have this person, you have this brilliant soccer player inside this accountant who's sitting there, you know, fussing with his feet all day long because he doesn't want to be an accountant.
Sure.
You know, and it's so interesting because when I work with people on this inner child stuff, there's so many layers of, inevitably people will say, what am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing on the planet? Why am I here? And I always take them back to, what was the feeling when you were a child? What was it you dreamed about doing? Well, I always wanted to be a writer. Well, are you writing? Are you writing anything right now? No. You know, it's stuff like that just, you know, if people realize that their true passion of what they felt when they were children was to me really connected. I mean, that's when we're all really, really connected, and that's the part of us, again, that I said we carry around with us. We have to take care of that child. It's a really very precious, beautiful part of ourselves. You know, and to become more conscious and to be aware that we're 12 years old right now and we want to eat ice cream is okay, but just to be aware of it, to observe that that's the part of us that's up front, and to be able to be the adult and step forward and say, okay, you know, time for the adult to be in charge and manage this situation.
Now, it seems interesting in the perspective that you're shedding here that as people feel denied of their passions, and inadvertently it sounds like, it's interesting how family and society as a whole will always tell us in our best interest why we shouldn't do a thing that we're interested in doing.
Right.
And so when we don't have that opportunity to experience that special thing that lights us up, that makes us unique as we are, that special reason that we're here, to gift the world with the gifts that we have, you could understand reasons for addictions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times addictions are, you know, an element of a person trying to cope and deal with their own sensitivity. You know, they're just feeling really sensitive about everything. They pick up on everything. They're kinesthetic. They're some people, you know, who are very clairvoyant. They just can't deal. And again, nobody hands us a book when we're growing up that says, here's how you deal with sensitivity. You know? And then when we're 18, here, now you parent your own inner child. You know? And when you're 21 or however you're old, when you have children,
what a raw
this is how you parent children. But I do feel that there is a part of us that really has to learn how to manage and take care of this very precious little kid inside of us. And it's not to be squelched, it's not to be shut down, it's to be understood. And that when we have those feelings, like we're going through something in our daily life, we're at work, and all of a sudden someone interacts with us and they leave abruptly, and suddenly we have this overwhelming feeling of abandonment. And we're going, God, you know, and it plugs us into the immediate moment. We're reacting to that moment. We're reacting that person walked out on us in the middle of a conversation. But what we're not realizing is that what's really been plugged in is the 6-year-old child who experienced being abandoned because when Dad was upset, he walked out of the room, and it was interpreted as abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing about kids. You know, kids, when they're growing up, they experience something, and they can say, wow, the sky is purple, and that's their experience. And it doesn't matter that their parents are standing there saying, no, honey, that's actually blue. The child is saying it's purple, and it's real. And so, even though Dad may have walked out of the room, so to not blow a gasket in front of his child, he was actually protecting the child. The child's interpretation was, Dad abandoned me.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets kind of tricky. We have to really give a lot of love and support and care to our parents because, of course, they were doing the best jobs that they could. But we also have to now be responsible and take on that inner child and parent ourselves. And I do think that statement you made earlier is very accurate, that a lot of people are just big kids.
Exactly. A 5-year-old getting ready to retire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned earlier about, I guess you would call it a creative visualization. Is there one that you could offer for our listeners right now to give them a feel of how perhaps potent something like that can be?
Sure. It's the visualization that most of us would benefit from is just to see yourself holding that child, that part of you. Let's say you close your eyes and you imagine yourself walking up to you as a child, and you see yourself at 5 years old. Pick that child up and just hold him in your arms and feel your heart opening up and filling that child up with love, and their heart opening up and filling you up with love. And that exercise alone can heal, a tremendous amount, and it will help reconnect you to that part of yourself. A lot of times people have to grow up so fast, and they have to become little adults so quickly.
Isn't that true? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that they don't remember really how to be a child, and it's important that we have the opportunity to connect with that inner child and to play, to maybe set time aside if you ended up being an adult at 12 years old and the 12-year-old never got to really be a kid, to go out and ride bikes, to go out and, get an ice cream, and maybe you take your own 12-year-old child with you, but you allow yourself that moment of experiencing that, because I see that a lot with people who are parenting and who are struggling in their parenting, is that they feel like they have to be so in charge and so in control of the situation that they completely disconnect from that inner child.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. It's really, to me, it's okay to have those fun times when we're playful, but also remember, okay, the adult needs to step back in now. And most of all, to be kind to ourselves. We're all so hard on ourselves.
I think so. I agree.
And the inner critic is, just time to shut up. Hit the stop button on the inner critic, because it runs rampant. And I work with that a lot with clients, There's just this endless loop tape of, criticism that goes on. And of course, that's, again, stuff that came from, childhood and the way that the child was talked to, or the way that they, heard it when they were growing up. And it's all part of the processing that can be done to stop that, put an end to it, to start living your life from a place of real, a completely different experience of joy and freedom.
It's interesting to bring up thinking, because I remember in Buddhism they have a precept that says, what you think you become. And it's amazing that how simple that statement is, just how true it is at the same time. And I would even challenge my listeners out there, think about your thoughts as much as you can through the course of a day, and you'd be surprised how much you're actually led by them in some of the most ridiculous directions.
Exactly. That's absolutely right.
Because then you'd step back and go, why would I do that under normal circumstances? Well, you were under normal circumstances. They were yours.
Right, and really where the impulses are coming from. Because, again, that's another layer of looking at where we're really acting from that inner child, or we're really acting from the adults. And I always use big powerful people as the examples, because we all have those moments when we have to walk into a boardroom or a meeting, or some kind of setting that's really scary and has us very nervous. And the old adage that people say, if you just imagine everybody sitting there in their underwear, it's not so scary. I take it one step further and say, if you just imagine all of those people with their inner child up front, it completely changes the equation of who that person is. And suddenly they're not so scary. Yeah, maybe they have a big vibrato and they're kind of gruff, and they can get boisterous and yell a lot. Well, that's probably the 3-year-old who's trying to get their way and is really upset and angry that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of it shifts things for how we look at people and how we experience them, and maybe not being so afraid of one another. And I wanted to mention that to you about fear, and that I feel that fear is something that is just running rampant in our world right now, and there's so much that people are afraid about, from the world ending to nuclear war to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the very thing. Fear is the very thing that we all could benefit from going inside and calming down that inner child. Because
well,
again,
you think too, Sonia. Excuse me. Well, when you think about just that simplicity right there, is, for instance, people, as they go, let's say, to a psychic, it's usually revolving around love, money, or career. Those are the big three.
Right.
But the consistent thing that you'll hear from a lot of people is they wish they had more money, and they're usually the top 2 reasons that they wish they were rich, let's just say, is A, because they feel they would be happy, because they would have free choices, so to speak. And the second thing is they would have security. Yet we've had those 2 things all the time.
Right. And we can, what so many people don't know is we can be happy, and we can experience love at the deepest level of our being, and not need those other things that we all believe are going to make us happy. But the fear element, the fear element is the part that is perpetuating a lot of the energies that are happening right now. The very fact that people around the world are in fear of, the Mayan calendar coming to an end, and that they're looking at it and approaching it from a place of fear, is actually bringing around events and causing things to come together that could cause that.
Right,
and
exactly.
So, my big message on a global level, being the good Aquarian that I am, is to to talk to that inner child and really, really, calm the waters, and not be fearful. Be the adult and let the child be comforted by you, because my interpretation and what my guides have told me is this whole thing that's coming up in our future is about the shift in consciousness. It's not about the end. It's not about anything ending. It's about a new beginning. It's about a whole shift in consciousness. And we're sort of teetering right now in this delicate balance of, okay, which way are we going to shift? And I I really want to urge the media to get on board with helping people shift in a positive way.
Very much true. I know that that's one of the things we try to do here with the Beyond 50 radio program, is to show a nice scope of possibilities rather than continually pointing at the problem and finding somebody to blame. And I think there's plenty of that going on out there. And it seems, I remember years ago, there was a teacher of mine, World War II veteran actually, a major, and he said one day, and I didn't think about it much then, but boy, has it made a lot of sense to me lately, at least in the last couple of years. And he simply says, whenever you point your finger and blame to something outside yourself for what's happening to you now, just remember that you have 3 fingers pointing back at you.
That's fantastic. fantastic. And that
and the
is,
more I wrestle with that, the more it actually clears a lot of stuff. And I realize the more I take responsibility for what's happening, regardless of whether it's somebody imposing, whatever it may be, that I happen to be there, so it's just as much my fault.
Exactly. And that's the higher octave of what we're talking about. That is, in fact, the very, very core of this work, what you just said. And that is that if you find someone to be completely bugging you and they're angry all the time and they're really being creepy to you, you have to look inside yourself and find where you have that ability to be bugging somebody and to be, kind of mean and crabby. You have to find that part inside yourself and heal it within yourself. And if we all had that awareness and perspective, we would heal the world. The world would shift in consciousness. But there's a lot of people who choose to not take responsibility on that level. And that's why, we start with working with the inner child first, and we get responsibility for that inner child, and then we bring the adult to a place of really owning every moment of everything that's happening. Because it's all just a reflection. I'm an incredible reflection of you right now, reflecting back to you that, you have this highly evolved, intuitive side, your female side, and you're reflecting back to me this very, wisdom, sharp, bright man, male side of me. It's like we're reflecting something back to each other right now that's really great. And every moment is like that. And I remember going to my teacher years ago and saying, oh, my God, I'm working for Darth Vader, but Darth Vader's a woman. And she laughed and she said, oh, honey, she said, you have to find where Darth Vader is inside of you.
Exactly.
And just like Luke in the movie, I was going, no! I was screaming, no.
You're not my father. It's not possible.
No, right. Right. So it's really, really important that we take it to that level. I'm so glad you brought that up, and just, and to be able to say we've got to own it and really take responsibility for what's going on.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how people will go through life holding on to anger for a wrong they felt that someone has done, whether it's a parent that let's say their own child feels that they have wronged them, and they'll just be angry and defiant and do everything they can to push all the emotional buttons they can possibly find to make this adult blow up and finally lose it. And you finally have to say, all right, well, this did happen, and this did hurt you. But the question comes now is, how much punishing do you think this person deserves before you're satisfied that the score is even?
Exactly.
And when you realize that other person just may turn and work on themselves and go a different direction, you're still the one stuck with that pain and that anger, whether they're thinking about you or not.
Right.
And that can become very deadly after a while.
Well, it can, and the next part of that pain and anger is that person may really want to prove to themselves, which is why they continually act out the pain and anger, that they're not worthy of being loved. That they are not worthy of being loved, because how that translates when they're young and all of this stuff is happening around them. Dad and mom are fighting, and there's physical violence, and the child's just imprinting all this stuff and getting beat up half the time, and then and so the child doesn't feel loved, and certainly doesn't feel worth being loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an adult, you have this really angry man acting out all this stuff, and yes, it can become very dangerous and very, it could become a bad situation. But the ultimate is, well, I'm going to push everybody so far away. I'm going to be so mean and so angry because I have to prove to myself that I'm not worth being loved. And I see it all the time.
I'm sure you do.
I see it all the time. And to take it to a further octave, I see it in, the people who end up in prison. I see it in people who are committing crimes. Yes, their crimes are not okay, and this is not an excuse. But, on a much deeper soul level, that's what's going on.
You know, it's funny you should bring up crime. I was just thinking about a time that I was downtown on a traffic ticket, and there was this woman who was up in front of the judge, and apparently she had another ticket. I couldn't even remember what it was for, but I'll never forget just the conversation, how silly it really was from the perspective I was at least experiencing it from, and that was simply that she was saying she was having a lot of problems with her driving record due to domestic abuse. And the judge is sitting here and he's looking at her file and says, well, you've got 8 driving while suspended tickets in the last 3 years. She says, yeah, but I'm not driving now.
Wow.
I'm thinking, it just, you know, the judge, he's just sitting there with a smile and he says, you know, it's really hard for me to believe you when right here you've broken the law by doing what you weren't supposed to be doing, and you want to blame all this on domestic abuse.
Right.
You were the one driving the car when you got the ticket. How is that related to somebody else?
Right.
And it does. It astounds me when you just turn the mirror just that way and you ask, you know, yourself as you're experiencing this other person who's, oh, this, that, and the other. You say, but where is your responsibility in all this? The world actually kind of gets funny after a while when you see so much pain and denial around you.
Mhm. Yes, and it's important for people like you in the job that you have, which is to bring consciousness to the rest of us, to bring awareness like you do with your radio program. It's so cool, but you of all people, in much like in my job, we have to be the ones to be able to tread water and keep our heads above the water, because it can be really depressing, and it can, be hard to day in and day out, see some of these things and go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let me go comfort my inner child right now, because this is really
give
painful.
them a bath.
This is really painful, yeah. And to I find for me to remain hopeful that a lot of my clients look to me for hope, and they look to me for faith, and I have a lot of hope and I have a lot of faith, but I feel it's something that's missing in a lot of our society. And all I can say is that we can create reality, and we can create our world the way we want it, and we all have the ability to do so.
And what's quite incredible about that statement, Sonia, that you just made is you hear a lot of religious people say God created us in His like image, but how far off the mark they live their lives from understanding what that really means.
Yeah, people have to decide. Everybody makes that decision at some point. Okay, I am going to recycle. I do care about the environment, so I am going to recycle. Well, it's the same with our spiritual lives. It's the same with having faith and having hope inside of us, is that we decide we're going to get off our duffs and do it. And unfortunately, people have become very complacent in this world. They'd rather drive to the mall and go shopping, and somehow, in all of the wondrous things that we've created in technology, it's also another escape form. It's another way to medicate, and people are medicating in all different types of ways. And I encourage everybody to go find a little piece of earth and sit down on it, and get back in touch.
Hug a tree, play with a frog.
Yeah, we've lost our earth ways, and we really need to get back to that, and to never forget this planet is powerful, and she could shake us off like a bunch of fleas at any moment.
Isn't that the truth? Well, Sonia Grace, I was going to ask you, for our listeners out there, how can, if somebody feels that they're lost, can they find you?
Well, they could call my office, 503-746-6525, or they could visit my website, which is www.sonja, SONJA, Grace, GRACE.com.
Sonia Grace, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You bet. So there you go. It's all up to you. We always like to bring the resources to help you move forward if that's what you're looking for on the Beyond 50 radio program. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter where we also post a lot of our other resources there as well. And also be sure to visit our blog where you'll see a nice green frog, as I talked about. Pick up a frog and play with it. So go to our blog and do just that. That's where we post all of our archived shows where you can pick up and listen at your convenience, and also pass it on to friends as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.